Hi, Rex Rogers here from Cairo. This is vlog number 5 of a privileged trip I am involved in right now in the Middle East and North Africa. We've talked about Jordan. We're now in Cairo, as I said. Spent the day throughout the city, got more of a thorough exposure to the city of Cairo than I've ever had before. We're staying in New Cairo, which is outside of Old Cairo, over toward the airport. Unbelievable. It looks like Southern California, Southern Florida. High rent district, to say the least, in terms of the amount of development that's taken place here. And 15 years ago, I mean, there was nothing here. There was absolutely nothing here but sand. And now there are hundreds and hundreds of 4 or 5-story dwellings owned by families. There's enormous malls. There's huge corporations. There's restaurants and other eateries to no end. It is an unbelievable place, this thing called New Cairo. But today we drove to Old Cairo, which features some of the oldest churches in the city. We went to the Hanging Church. It's called the Hanging Church. It's the oldest Coptic church because underneath of it, water had come in a period of time and completely washed out everything. It's literally hanging over this sort of open area, almost like a basement. And based on a couple of foundations on one side or another, and underneath there's nothing. It's an incredible thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful church that's been refurbished in the last, I don't know, just 2 or 3 years. We were also in the nearby, next door, Greek Orthodox Church, where a priest was speaking in Greek and talking to some young people who were visiting at the time. And next to it is the Ben Ezra Synagogue. I think I've only been in maybe 1, 2 other synagogues ever, been in a lot of churches, been in a lot of mosques, but I don't think I've been in more than a couple of synagogues, including one in Jerusalem and then one, I don't know if it was in New York or Detroit. But this one was we're in, and had kind of a setup like the Holy of Holies, where the Torah would be kept, and then the Bema seat, where the speaker would read from the Torah, the rabbi, and the men would be around the edges, and the women upstairs, completely separated in kind of a balcony overlook and listening to the same service that might last for an hour. And then, that, of course, that area where the Torah is being read is considered almost like the holy place. It's very similar to the tabernacle and the temple in the Old and New Testament. So quite fascinating to be there. Right outside of that is the traditional location. It's one of those things, again, historically, where they claim that this is the place where the Nile River used to flow there. And not only did the Nile River used to flow that close and in that area, which is totally dry and gone at this point and now a couple of miles away, this is the place where Moses was found. Now, who knows? And in a sense, who cares? We just know that it was a true story that he was found by the Pharaoh's daughter, and the whole story of Moses goes on from there. But, I'm rather skeptical about those sites about where Jesus was baptized or Moses was found, or also under this synagogue and area, I guess not in the synagogue, under the church nearby, was the area where they believe that Joseph and Mary, or they claim Joseph and Mary and the babe Jesus stayed for 3.5 years. Tradition says 3.5 years, when they had fled from Israel and fled from Herod and did not return until he was dead, and going back, of course, to Joseph's hometown of Nazareth. Now, again, why there? Why in that particular grotto? You go in, I've done that same thing in Bethlehem, and say, well, this is where Jesus was born. But it's, it's a little cave, a little rock thing, and a church at some point in history came along, was built on top of it, and claims that this is the place. So, again, rather skeptical of those things, but interesting nonetheless, and able to see these different kind of churches. And rather interesting, just say one thing about the church. Our host, Assam Nagy, who has studied a great deal about this, kind of took us through it. Said had a cross, and the 4 arms of the cross were of equal length. And these depictions written beautifully, or inscribed or carved in wood in the walls. And on the end of each of the 4 arms of the cross was a 3-pointed crown. So 4 times 3, that's 12. That's the 12 apostles or disciples who God sent out in every direction after Jesus' resurrection. and that's indicative of that kind of thing. And so it's kind of interesting to see that. There was a little triangular, kind of almost like a triangle, depiction in each of those around the cross, which is synonymous of the fish, the Christian fish, which is a symbol of life throughout Christian history. So that was kind of fascinating to see that, and to see how the Coptics, much like our Catholic friends, have had a great ability over time to express their faith in architecture, to express what they believe. The sad part about any of those kinds of things, to me, any kind of iconography, is that it seems like human beings being what they are, very soon they're worshiping the icon rather than the creator, rather than God himself, rather than Jesus, and including, sadly kissing it, or in other ways honoring it, worshiping that kind of piece rather than what it means. But the meaning is powerful when you see that. Even had Star of David indicated on some of those places, turned a little bit on its side for those Christians, unfortunately, who have blamed the Jews for Jesus' death and hated Jews over the centuries, but they didn't want to rattle them. But it was the Star of David, and the Star of David was included in order to convey the fact that there's a unity between the New Testament and the Old Testament. So I found that quite interesting. In Cairo in general today, getting to know the city a little bit, it's quite different from Jordan here in Egypt. It's not like you think that somebody's looking at you all the time, but the Cairo police or some sort of official seems like they're everywhere. And certainly any historical site or archaeological place, tourist place that you visit, you're going to be checked out. And if you're with Egyptian friends, the Egyptian friends have to sort of declare themselves. And as they would say, if we get in trouble, I get in trouble, they're liable because we're with them. So it's kind of interesting to see that level of depth of control. Maybe is too strong, but certainly it's an intrusive involvement in private life. Cairo is a very littered city. Now, not New Cairo, but Old Cairo and much of the rest. It's very different from Amman. Amman, I was just blown away by how clean that city is, cleaner than U.S. cities by far. Cairo is pretty bad off in some places, and there's even a huge, what we'd call a landfill outside of the city that they just push stuff over the hill, and it runs down the side of the hill, the trash, the garbage, and can spill right out on the highway, and it's all along the highways where people have thrown it. It's incredibly unsanitary, unhygienic, but it's not even a landfill because it didn't cover it up. It's just a garbage dump. And of course, they have the famous garbage city here, where people actually live in that city. I've visited that in the past, where they live in and among the garbage, which is a quite sad thing. Driving and traffic in Cairo, I don't know if there's any other city in the world, probably is. I've always heard this about Mexico City, but I haven't been there. Where there's supposed to be probably 4 lanes, there's always like 6, 7 lanes of traffic weaving in and out. And how they avoid traffic accidents. I saw one accident today, a little bump, but how people don't get hurt because they cross the street right smack in front of you when you're coming right at them. And they're just, it's unreal. It really is unreal. It's in constant horn honking and sort of zigzagging in and out. That's how you go. And none of the streets have lines on them, traffic lanes. Now, some of the newer highways in newer areas in New Cairo do have lanes, and apparently those are being structured according to international driving standards, but certainly that's not the case in the city. And the jury's out, I think, as to whether or not the lanes will even have any kind of impact on culture, because that's the way it's been. This is where you learn to drive. You talk about driving defensively, but you drive offensively, and it's just the way it is. It's just an unbelievable experience to ride in front seat, somebody else do the driving. Horns honking constantly. Had an interesting experience today where a lady at one of these church sites knew one of our hosts, and as we were leaving, she came running up, and I don't know why, but she gave to me, she said something about Yankee Doodle, meaning, referring to the fact I'm an American. And I said it earlier when I'd met her. I said, yeah, something like that, and kind of joked. And she came running up and she gave me something. She said, it's scented. And then I walked out later and opened it. It's a round kind of plastic packet. You open it up and there's a rosary inside. So I was presented with a scented rosary today, which is quite fascinating. I have it with me, and I'll keep it. But a lot of things interesting too. I watched my hosts today, my Egyptian friends, how they order in restaurants. We tend to order an entree, a platter, and with it comes a couple of side dishes. Maybe you have a choice, maybe you don't, but the side dishes are a certain size, and they all fit on what we call that platter or that dish. That's not how they do it here. Here they order whatever their entree is, and it may be quite large in itself, and then they order several other side dishes, multiple side dishes. So I was with 3 Egyptian friends today, and at what we'd call lunch, they used to call it dinner, but they ordered 9 side dishes, 9. And I mean, these aren't little tiny little saucer plates. These are big plates full of food. So by the time it all comes, it just keeps coming and coming. It's an incredible amount of food. It doesn't cost all that much, but it's an incredible amount of food beyond the so-called entree. So I now know I'm not going to order anything but my chicken kebab or whatever it is that I'm interested in, because that's it. And anything else that I might pick up is from somebody else, or I'm not going to order more food because you can't handle it. You just can't eat that much. I can't, even though I'm capable of eating a lot at the very time, but I can't eat that much in traveling. And so it's kind of fascinating city. As I said, we had a great day. Kind of looking at my notes here, jotted them down. The city itself is dynamic. I've been thinking all day, what does it mean to have a political system that is premised to some extent on authority and control and sort of top down, not dictatorship. It's not like that, but at the same time, something far removed from Western individualism, or what we'd call a free and open democracy, and at the same time have an economic system that seems to be thriving, prosperous. And the only explanation I have came from one of my Egyptian friends or hosts who said, everything you see in New Cairo, in every new business, everything that looks prosperous and is prosperous economically, somehow involves the military as a partner, somehow, somebody. So there's graft at all levels. And there's a system of bribery in a way this system works. And I guess in one sense, if you looked at it and said, well, that's the price of doing business. So if you're a mall developer and you build a mall and you have to involve somebody from the military and he or she, mostly he, gets his cut, okay, fine, he gets his cut, but then you're making an incredible amount of money. You're very well off. Your family becomes wealthy or is wealthy already and perpetuates its status. In society, that sort of cut, if you will, price of doing business. But if you want to look at it in terms of right and wrong, law and order, what's moral, I mean, then you can really, what's the right kind of political and economic system and philosophy, you can really drive yourself into some really interesting thinking, which I've been kind of doing off and on all day long. So Cairo, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. This is my 3rd visit, and have another full day tomorrow and a piece of the next day to enjoy Cairo, and we'll be back next week, God willing, to spend a day or two before heading home and being able to see. We sat, by the way, this afternoon for a while right on the Nile and drank my cappuccino. They didn't have my favorite latte, but had that, and it was really beautiful weather and pleasant and nice to watch the Nile kind of drift by and to think about the significance of that river in human civilization. So Rex from Cairo, we'll catch you again.